Strikers 2. The Age of Icons 1980s and 1990s. Football changed forever in the 1980s. It wasn't just a sport anymore. It became television drama, it became pop culture, it became a stage where heroes and villains were born. And in the middle of it all stood one figure, the striker. The world didn't just watch strikers. It worshipped them. Diego Maradona, the forward who carried a nation. Let's begin in 1986, Mexico. The sun was blazing, the Azteca Stadium was vibrating, and Diego Maradona was rewriting the history of football. Though not a traditional number 9, Maradona carried the spirit of a striker, a man obsessed with goals, glory, and defiance. Against England, he scored the infamous Hand of God. But just minutes later, he produced what many call the goal of the century. Picking the ball up in his own half, dancing past 5 defenders, and slotting it home. It wasn't just a goal. It was Argentina's answer to political pain, to the scars of the Falklands War. For his people, Maradona wasn't a footballer. He was vengeance. He was redemption. This was the 1980s. Strikers weren't just athletes. They were revolutionaries. The Golden Boot hunters, Lineker, Platini, Van Basten. The 80s also gave us pure strikers, men whose boots spoke louder than their mouths. Gary Lineker of England, cool, calm, clinical. He won the Golden Boot in 1986, scoring 6 goals with the ice-cold composure of a sniper. Michel Platini of France, more of a forward playmaker, but his goal-scoring ability stunned Europe. He scored 9 goals in Euro 1984, a record that still stands. Marco van Basten of the Netherlands, elegance and brutality in one body. His volley in the Euro 1988 final, from an almost impossible angle, is still considered one of the greatest goals in football history. These men didn't just score. They defined tournaments. They gave football an identity. The 1990 World Cup, tears, pressure, and Paolo Rossi's shadow. By 1990, the World Cup in Italy was dominated by drama, tactics, and defensive walls. But still, the strikers found a way to break through. Salvatore Schillaci, a relatively unknown Italian forward, became the hero of the tournament. His explosive goals lit up the nights in Rome, Naples, and Palermo. He carried Italy to the semi-finals and won the Golden Boot. Meanwhile, the shadow of Paolo Rossi from 1982 still lingered, the striker who had once stunned Brazil with a hat-trick and carried Italy to glory. The 1990 World Cup proved something crucial. Even in the most defensive systems, even in the toughest battles, strikers were the ones who broke the deadlock. They were the ones who made people dream. The 1990s, the era of gods with boots. The 1990s took strikers to another level. This was when footballers became global icons, faces on posters, names on t-shirts, legends of video games and commercials. And at the heart of it were names that still make fans emotional today. 1. Gabriel Batistuta, Batigol, the Argentine lion with flowing hair, thunder in his right foot, and fire in his heart. Batistuta was pure rage mixed with elegance. He didn't just score goals, he unleashed them, with volleys that shook nets and free kicks that felt like explosions. For Fiorentina and Argentina, he was not just a striker. He was a warrior. Fans in Florence worshipped him like a god, even when the club was relegated. Because Batistuta was loyalty, power, and love, all in one. 2. George Weah, the pride of Africa. In the 1990s, one man carried the dreams of an entire continent, George Weah from Liberia. His journey was from the streets of Monrovia to the grand stages of AC Milan and Paris Saint-Germain. He became the first African player to win the Ballon d'Or in 1995. His most famous goal, picking the ball inside his own half, sprinting the entire length of the field, dribbling past defender after defender, and finishing with calm precision. Weah wasn't just a striker. He was proof that football belonged to everyone, no matter where you came from. 3. Ronaldo Luis Nazario, El Fenomeno. And then came a boy from Brazil. A boy with lightning in his legs, courage in his heart, and destiny in his boots. Ronaldo Nazario. The phenomenon. At just 17, he was already frightening defenders. By the mid-1990s, at Barcelona and Inter Milan, he was unstoppable. He wasn't just scoring, he was humiliating defenders with speed, strength, and dribbles that felt unreal. In 1998, he carried Brazil to the World Cup final. Though his mysterious illness before the final shocked the world, Ronaldo's aura was untouchable. By the late 90s, he was already being called one of the greatest strikers of all time. And he was just getting started. 4. Alan Shearer, England's relentless gunman. In England, there was only one king of the box, Alan Shearer. Strong, direct, fearless. Shearer was the embodiment of English football, grit, power, and determination. He became the Premier League's all-time top scorer with 260 goals. Every header, every volley, every penalty, he made them look routine. But behind that calm face was a fire, a hunger to never stop. Strikers as superstars, the cultural shift. The 1990s weren't just about goals. They were about identity. Strikers became symbols of style, courage, and even rebellion. Kids grew their hair long because Batistuta did. Fans wore Brazil shirts because Ronaldo made them dream. Children in Africa believed in football because of George Weah. The striker was no longer just an athlete. He was a global superstar. The pressure of the 90s striker. But with fame came pressure. Every miss was replayed on television. Every goal was immortalized. The striker's life became heavier, more demanding, and more unforgiving. Yet, those who could handle the pressure became legends. They wrote their names into the eternal chapters of football history. Closing of Part 2. From Maradona's magic in the 1980s. To Van Basten's elegance, to Batistuta's fire, to Weah's pride, to Ronaldo's phenomenon, to Shearer's power. The 1980s and 1990s built strikers into gods. They were no longer shadows of formations. They were the faces of nations. But as the new millennium approached, a new breed was waiting: Thierry Henry, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Samuel Eto'o, Didier Drogba, David Villa, and a certain Portuguese boy and Argentine teenager who would change football forever. That story awaits in Part 3. If this episode made you relive the magic of 80s and 90s strikers, then don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and comment your favorite striker from this golden era. And of course, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you don't miss Part 3, the rise of strikers in the 2000s.